channel today.
I have my February wrap up for you.
I have my
February wrap up for you.
Now, I will say I was a little more disappointed
progression
with my
in February.
I read 12 books in January, and I only read 12 books in January, and I only barely read 4 in February. For some reason, I just got into these where I wouldn't pick up a book for days. That kind of was a downer, but you know, life happens. But I do want to talk today about the 4 books I did read in February. So the first book I read in February was a buddy read with my good friend Jennifer, and it is Ensnared, which is the final book in the Splintered trilogy by A.G. Howard. This book I was nervous to read because the second book in this trilogy, Unhinged, kind of irritated me towards the end, and I was really not happy with the way it ended, so I was worried about this one, and I'm not gonna lie, I went ahead and read a little bit ahead just to make sure that it was going to be worth it, because if it did not end in a way I wanted to, I really wasn't going to finish it. I know, I'm awful. But it seemed like it was going to go in a way that I was okay with, so I did go ahead and read this, and it was fantastic. It could not have ended in a better way. I feel like they ended this trilogy so much, even more than I could have hoped for. Probably the first third of the book went a little slower than I would have liked, but that didn't really bother me because there was a lot of character development that you got to meet new people who became relevant to the story towards the end, and I really did enjoy that. You got to learn more about Alyssa's dad, which was really cool because I didn't anticipate that coming. Before I read Unhinged, like towards the end of it, I wouldn't have thought that we would have learned more about her dad in this book. So I really did enjoy that part too. I love the new kind of roles that the two guys, Morpheus and Jeb, play in this one, and then how it pans out, like I said, was just, I loved the way this ended, and I don't think that it really could have ended any other way that would have made anybody happy. So I did give this 5 out of 5 because I thought just the way that she wrapped it all up was just fantastic. The next book I read in February was Fallen Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes. Now this one in the beginning gave me a little bit of trouble. I think it was in the middle of my first reading slump for the month, and what happened was I picked it up, read the prologue, got super excited. Then I read the first 4 chapters, realizing it was a dual perspective book, and reminded me so much of Game of Thrones that I was like, oh no, I don't know if this is going to be a book I like. This isn't exactly what I was anticipating. But, so what I did is I set it down, and I think I set it down for like a week, maybe 2, and I just didn't touch it. I was like, no, I can't get into this right now. But then it got to be the point where I got really annoyed seeing it on my currently reading thing on Goodreads, so I'm like, I'm just gonna finish it. And I'm so glad that I did. I jumped right back into it, and for some reason, as soon as I picked it back up, it was smooth sailing from there. This book was so good. I can definitely see why people say this is a YA version of Game of Thrones. I've not read the Song of Fire and Ice series by George R.R. Martin, but I've seen enough of the show to know that this is very similar. There is betrayal, and there's love, and there's death, and there's quirky friendships, and there's magic realism. It is just so cool. I loved this book. I will say this, I believe, let me look here, I did give it a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads because not only did it take me a little bit to get into it, which I think was my personal just reading slump at the time, but can we just talk about the fact that I got so excited about a relationship that I thought was going to happen, and then it started, and then 5 minutes later ended. Like, finally, like, never gonna happen, ended. And I was like, what? In the beginning of it, I'm not gonna say who the 2 people were just so you don't get spoiled in case you have not read this, but first I was shocked that it just came about so quickly because, like I said, this is a dual perspective, so each chapter is a different person from a different kingdom. And so when I saw that it happened, I was like, oh, okay, well, I wanted that to happen, so that's all right, but it happened really quick. And then they finally are together, and then they're not. I don't know. I guess that's what I'm to expect with books like this, but I was really sad. And then when I got to thinking about it, I'm like, you know, I've never heard anyone mention this relationship ever, so maybe that could have been a clue that it wasn't gonna be meant to be and it wasn't gonna happen. So now that I've kind of told you guys how I feel about this book, I suppose I should tell you what this book is about. I'm a little backwards today, don't mind me. So basically this takes place in the world of Mythica, and there are 3 main kingdoms in it where we follow a main character from each kingdom. And there's an event that happens in the very beginning of the book that kind of sets off the rest of the book, and I'm assuming the rest of the series and how it's just going to go. And I really did enjoy it. Like, the character building in this, I feel like there's so much room for growth for most of these main characters. characters, and I liked every character in their own way. Like, in the role that they were meant to play, I loved it. And then I loved the world building is getting better. Like, I feel like in the very beginning when I kind of was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna like this, I wasn't a fan of it, but now that we're learning more about the kingdoms and about the areas and just their culture, I really do enjoy that as well. I did, right after this, go out and buy the next 3 books that are out for this series because I loved it so much, and I plan to read those probably in March and April. So I highly recommend this. If you guys have not read this yet, I definitely suggest picking it up. So the next book I read in February was The Invasion of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. Guys, I'm not quite sure how to describe this book because this was the this was the last book I read in this month, but I started it right after Fallen Kingdom. So yeah, basically what this is the second book in the Tearling trilogy. It is following the Queen of the Tearling, which I talked about in my January wrap-up. If you guys have not seen it, go ahead and check that video out. You'll hear me talk about it. I did love that book so much, and so I had high hopes and expectations for this book. So I started it. It seemed to be a little bit slow starting, but I figured it'll be okay, it'll turn up, and then all of a sudden, you are thrown back into what their past is, but it's our future. So I did find that out in this book. I know I told you guys in The Queen of the Tearling, I wasn't sure when the timing of this was supposed to be. It is clearly told to you in this book. It is way far in the future from us. And so it's much farther in the future. But basically what happens is you find out that they start over. So it's so far in the future, and there's no technology, there's nothing left. Everything has been kind of left behind, and they just start a brand new world, and it is as if we have regressed back to before pre-technology kind of age. So basically what happened with this book was there was a lot of jumping and perspective, but time perspectives. So it wasn't that someone was like time traveling or anything, but there was a lot of like flashbacks almost, where the main character Kelsey was seeing a life of someone else from the past. And the first time it happened, I was super confused. I was like, wait, what is going on? Like, why are we talking about current things and not what's happening in their world? And I got to about 158 pages in, which is considered book 1 of this book, and I put it down. And I wasn't sure I was going to finish it. I had not gotten into it yet. I was really frustrated with all the jumping of it, and I wasn't feeling it. So I waited another week, read another book in between, and then I picked this back up, and I was able to marathon it and finish it in a day. We learn more about Kelsey. Kelsey's growing. She's 19. She's really trying to become the queen that she feels her people needs, but she's growing in ways that people are noticing and are starting to actually be fearful of her. And then the world building in this is great. You're finding out more about the past, like the crossing days, the pre-crossing days, and then the crossing itself with William Tyr. And overall, like, now that I've given myself a week since I finished this, I feel like my rating of 3.5 stars is pretty accurate, because while I did enjoy the book once I finished it, and looking back, I'm like, okay, it was a good sequel to the trilogy. I just myself, maybe it was at the time I was reading it, I couldn't really get into it, but it really just, there were parts where I was kind of like, and I had to reread areas just to make sure I was understanding it. I do look forward to reading the third one of this, which comes out in November of this year, but this one definitely was my least favorite so far of the 2 in the trilogy. So the next book I have for you that I read in February, and the last book that I read, I do not have the physical copy for you because I had to take it back to the library, but it was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. Now I have to tell you guys, this book was not anything like I thought it was going to be. From what I could gather from people telling me what it was about, I had this notion in my head, and I guess the title Red Queen itself made me think of something to do with Alice in Wonderland, which I knew had nothing to do with it, but I couldn't get that out of my head. But I went into this book having this idea of what it was going to be, and it was absolutely nothing what I thought it would be. And I was totally freaking okay with that. This book basically is about 2 different bloodlines, or blood systems in this world. You're either a red blood or you're a silver blood. If you're a silver blood, you are the elite, the royal, you have these abilities, these powers, and you basically are like the top of the top. And then there's the red bloods, who are the servants, the workers, the grunt people, the soldiers, who don't have really any ability and are kind of the lowest class possible. So we follow our main character. Crap, what is her name? Mare. So we follow our main character, Mare, and she ends up getting a job as she is a red blood in the castle, and something happens and she finds out she has abilities that only silver bloods are supposed to have. So they concoct this idea that she is going to pose as a silver blood until they can figure out exactly what it is that's going on. And so throughout the story, there's a slight love triangle / square, which that kind of confused me for a little bit, because there's 3 different guys that she's kind of has relationship, friendship, some kind of tie to. And so I was like, okay, one of these guys is either going to die or something's going to happen, because there's no way that this book is going to be able to portray a love square as easily as it could a love triangle. And so you follow along as she's learning more about her abilities. She's learning how to control them and how to really use them. And then she's also learning more about the world outside of her. There is this rebel cause that's going on, and they're trying to break free of this caste system from this, you know, these 2 separate bloods that are keeping everybody so separate. And I thought it was fantastic. I loved this book. I gave it, let me check my Goodreads really quick. I did give this book a 5 out of 5 because I feel like from the beginning, I really just jumped right into it, and I didn't have any slow periods through it. I finished it in a day. Like, I finished this book super quickly, and I really did like the progression of it. I feel like there's so much more that's going to happen in Glass Sword, which is the 2nd book in this series, and I'm really excited to jump into that. I did like the character building. There was 2 like huge like plot twists towards the end, or like surprisers, and one of them I saw coming, one of them I did not, and I was like, what just happened? It really just was a great book, and I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, guys, that's the end of my February wrap-up. Like I said, I only got 4 books read, but I feel like the books I read were either really great and I loved them, or they just kind of, they reminded me of what I do and don't like. I feel like even though Queen of the Tearling gave me a little bit of issue, I feel like in the end, after I had time to reflect on it, it did really turn out to be a book that I enjoyed. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have a February wrap-up video, please pop it down below or let me know your channel, and I would love to check it out. I do have more books that I plan to read in March, and I've already started one of them, and I'm almost done with it. So hopefully I'll have a better reading month this coming month. So thank you guys so much again for watching, and until my next video, I'll see you later. Bye!